All right, today we're tackling something that's a huge deal for anyone building with AI, Amazon Bedrock AgentCore. Think of it as a blueprint for taking your AI agents from just a cool demo to something that's actually ready for production. If you've ever tried to make that leap, you already know the headaches involved. So let's get into how AgentCore is designed to fix all that.
So let's just start with a really basic question. When you're in the trenches, building these agents, what's the one thing that really keeps you up at night? Is it the prompt engineering, getting the LLM to behave? I mean, maybe. But when you start thinking about real users and real scale, the biggest challenges are usually hiding somewhere else entirely.
And here it is. For most of us, the hardest part isn't the AI logic itself. It's all the stuff that has to wrap around it. We're talking about scaling up to handle thousands of concurrent users, managing conversational state for every single one, making sure each conversation is totally secure, and just wrestling with the raw complexity of the infrastructure. That's the real beast.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at how AgentCore tackles that complexity head-on. Then, we'll dive into its core building blocks, get into the nitty-gritty of its secure sessions, understand the language agents use to talk to other tools, and finally, we'll map out your journey from code to deployment.
Okay, first up, solving agent complexity. The whole idea, the entire philosophy behind AgentCore is to get you out of the business of managing infrastructure. It wants you to focus on what you're good at, building smart, creative agent logic, without getting totally bogged down in the operational weeds.
And you know, this quote from the source material just nails it. AgentCore is built to be this managed environment that takes care of all that heavy lifting for you. The scaling, the sessions, the security. It's basically infrastructure as a service, but it's been custom built specifically for the needs of AI agents.
All right, let's get a little technical and look under the hood at the architectural foundation. To really get what AgentCore is doing, you have to understand three key pieces that all work together: runtimes, versions, and endpoints. Think of these as the main components in your agent's deployment blueprint.
So at the very center of it all, you have the AgentCore runtime. This is the heart of your agent. It's basically a containerized application that holds all of your code and logic. Whether you built it using a framework like LangGraph or you wrote it all from scratch, this is where your agent actually lives and breathes. Next, we've got versions, and this introduces a really powerful concept: immutability. Every single time you update your runtime, say you push a new container image, AgentCore creates a brand new, unchangeable snapshot of that configuration. This is amazing because it gives you a perfect, reliable history of your deployments and makes rolling back to a previous state super simple. And the third piece of the puzzle is the endpoint. An endpoint is just a stable address, an Amazon resource name or ARN that your applications use to find and talk to your agent. Now the magic here is that an endpoint points to a specific version of your runtime. This is the secret sauce for doing seamless, zero downtime updates. You can fire up a new version, test it, and then just flip a switch to point the endpoint to it, all without your users ever noticing a thing. So let's see how this all clicks together. When you first create your runtime, boom, you get version 1 and a handy default endpoint pointing right at it. Now, let's say you push an update. A new, immutable version 2 is created. The default endpoint then just automatically swings over to point to this new latest version. It's that simple. Your users are always getting the latest and greatest code with no interruptions.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about something that's absolutely non-negotiable for any serious application: security. How does AgentCore make sure that every conversation a user has with your agent is completely private and locked down? Well, it all comes down to the idea of isolated sessions.
So every single conversation with your agent happens inside a session, which has its own unique ID. And here is the really critical part. Each session spins up in its own dedicated microVM. That means it has a totally isolated CPU, its own chunk of memory, and its own file system. There is literally no way for data from one user's session to bleed into another. This isn't just a feature, it's enterprise-grade security baked right into the architecture.
Now, a session can be active when it's processing a request, or it can be idle when it's just waiting for the user's next message. But the most important state here is terminated. As soon as a session ends, maybe it timed out after 15 minutes or hit its 8-hour max, that entire microVM is completely destroyed. And I don't just mean deleted. Its memory is actively sanitized or scrubbed clean to make sure absolutely no trace of that conversation is left behind.
Security also means authentication, right? And AgentCore splits this into two different kinds. You've got inbound authentication, which is all about controlling who can talk to your agent. This uses standard stuff like AWS IAM or OAuth. Then you have outbound authentication.
This is for letting your agent talk securely to other services, like a GitHub API, without you ever having to hardcode an API key or a password in your agent's code.
An agent that just sits in a box and can't interact with the outside world? Well, it's not very useful, is it? So this next part is all about how these agents actually communicate with the tools and APIs they need to get real work done. And to do that, they need to speak a very specific language.
So, for an agent to reliably call the tool, whether it's a simple weather API or a complex internal database, there has to be a standardized protocol, a common language. And in the world of Bedrock AgentCore, that language is called the Model Context Protocol, or MCP.
Now, MCP has two flavors, and this is a key decision you'll make as a developer. The default is stateless mode. This is for simple, one-shot tool calls. AgentCore gives you a session ID, and your tool just needs to listen for it. But if your tool needs to have a real back-and-forth conversation, like asking follow-up questions to book a complex trip, then you'll need stateful mode, where your own server takes charge of managing that conversation's context.
Okay, listen up because this is a performance tip you absolutely cannot forget. No matter which mode you're in, you have to grab the Mcp-Session-Id from AgentCore and send it back on every subsequent call within that same conversation. Why? Because this guarantees your requests get routed back to the same warm microVM. It's called microVM stickiness, and it's what saves you from the painful latency of a cold start. It's totally critical for a snappy user experience. So, we've covered the architecture, the security, the protocols. Let's bring it all home and walk through the final step, the path to deployment. How do you actually get from a file on your laptop to a real, live agent that people can start talking to?
It really boils down to this 5-step workflow. First, you prepare your agent's code. Then, you package that code into a container and push it up to Amazon's container registry. Step 3, you create your AgentCore runtime, which we now know automatically gives you your first version and endpoint. From there, you're ready to go. You start invoking the agent by calling its ARN, just making sure to give each new conversation its own unique session ID. And finally, you manage and update it over time using that slick version and endpoint system we talked about.
So when you put it all together, the big takeaway is this. AgentCore is designed to solve the undifferentiated heavy lifting. All that tedious work of managing infrastructure, security, and scaling, it's handled. It gives developers a powerful, managed platform built just for AI agents. Which really only leaves one final and much more exciting question. Now that the hard part is solved for you, what will you build?